You kind of hinted in the last time we were together about a competition to create a voting system for, what was it, the UK Parliament or something like that?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
So this is going back to, I think, 2008-ish.
Okay.
Reforming the voting system became a thing. Mm-hmm. The reason, in part, it became a thing was because while normally a two-party system, briefly it became a three-party system. The third party, the Liberal Democrats, managed to score enough of the Parliament that they become, not merely kingmakers for a hung Parliament, but actually they had a substantial, I think it was like 25, 35, 40. So they actually had a substantial portion of the votes. And of course, in a first-past-the-post system, it's wildly disproportionate. So while they had, a quarter of all parliamentarians, they had something like a third or even more of the overall votes of the country. So it was very much in their interest to change the voting system so it's proportionally representative of people's preferred parties.
So they would list, like, I would want this one first, this one second.
So
like
the
that.
idea, at its basic level, it depends a lot. Lots of different means of counting votes. But at the basic level, you have one preference. You count them all up. And then you assign a proportional amount of parliament of representatives. So if you count up, if there's 100 million people in the country and there's 100 seats in Parliament, then more or less it's about 1 million votes per seat. So if as a party you get 10 million votes, you would have 10 seats. This would be proportionally representative.
Okay.
It still wouldn't be potentially very good because it might be that you have parties where they're everybody's second choice, but nobody's first choice.
Right, yeah.
And then it's like, if you don't collect the second choices, you can't adequately utilize that information. And so then you end up with systems like, approval voting and board accounts and all sorts of stuff to try to better introduce this information into the final aggregation. Better introduce the idea that, it might be that people don't have a single party that they are 100% behind, and with all of the parties being 0% behind.
Right.
Maybe there's a combination that they're quite happy with.
Sure.
The idea was to take what the UK had currently been using, which is a first-past-the-post system. So basically the UK is split up into constituencies, so regions, of around 50,000 people each. And then each region votes independently, such that they just count which person gets the most votes.
In that region, like an MP or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that person gets sent to Parliament, and they represent that region.
Okay.
So you can easily have it in a heavily split region where someone gets there with 30% of the turnout voters and even less of the actual residents.
Yeah, right. Okay.
There are some places in like Northern Ireland where turnout is super low. It's 15,000, 10,000 people out of 50,000.
And they get a whole seat in the Parliament.
And then of those, maybe 40% of the voters actually command who goes to the ones that voted for the person that goes to Parliament. So it's it's not proportional in any way. And how much influence you have depends a lot on which constituency you live in.
Sure.
What the turnout is, what everybody else in that constituency, what parties they like. If you happen to live in a constituency where more than 50% of your fellow constituents will always vote for one particular party, you're absolutely set on one particular party, your vote literally doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you vote for because 50%, this guy is going to Parliament regardless of what the other 49% vote. So
we see that a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's, 10 representatives, and it'll be all 10, and they'll go with a 51% party. And it's like, what? It should be 5 and 5, surely.
Crazy. Okay.
But so the idea was, let's have a system where we don't break the old system. So this is one of the key propositions of the thing that I was bringing forward. People get weirded out by proportional representation, in part because it's they start voting for party rather than person.
Yeah.
is I don't know, maybe it's questionable, maybe it's not, but like there is an argument that in a voting system where we are voting, we are delegating our democratic authority to a third party, that we should know which third party we are delegating that authority to, like which person is actually going to be representing us. This is one of the sort of an argument for this democratic model. I should delegate to a person, not to a group. Maybe it's strong. So it should support both. So the proposition was it should support both delegating to person and delegating to party. And secondly, that it should retain, in the case of delegating to person, the constituency model. So you still vote within your constituency. The key difference with the model is to the current first-past-the-post system. So it retains a constituency model. Members of Parliament represent a constituency. It retains the ability for you to vote within your constituency for a person who may or may not be affiliated with a party. The key difference is that there's an extra box next to on the voting sheet, which is I don't mind being temporarily moved to another constituency if it helps get the party of the person I'm voting in. So it's like, because in the UK, and this is based around the idea that within the country, there is freedom of movement, right? So it doesn't matter. I am free to move from Lancaster to York if I want to do so.
Sure.
There is nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's sort of similar in the EU, right? I'm free to move from Belgium to Germany if I desire as an EU citizen. I'm not one at the moment, but I will be hopefully soon. This is a basic part of living in a free country, that you are free to move in the country.
Yeah, right.
So then the idea is, well, then in that case, it doesn't make sense to limit my vote geographically. If I'm free to move, why would my vote be limited to only being used in this constituency? Now, maybe I don't want my vote to be used to vote for someone other than this very particular person. Maybe. But I suspect in a lot of cases, people don't vote for the person, they vote for the party, in which case they would check the box. I don't care if my vote is used for this person or someone else from the same party.
Okay.
Now, what happens is we have this algorithm. And what it does is it basically says, right, the algorithm is free to move people temporarily, purely for the purposes of voting, from one constituency to another constituency and vote instead in their election. Right? Their vote gets removed from the constituency that they were notionally and originally, and instead their vote is used in this new constituency. And what the algorithm's able to do is basically take constituencies that are the most unanimous and say, right, all of the people who didn't vote for the winner, why would they, and have checked the extra box saying they don't mind if their vote's moved, why would they bother staying there?
That's interesting.
So what we do is we move them elsewhere. But in order to move them elsewhere, we require the winning party to fill them up with a member of a voter from themselves. So what they do is they move one of their voters from a losing constituency, one where they're never going to win. They've only got like 200 people, 200 voters, right?
Okay.
And they move those voters out, drain that constituency, which they're never going to win anyway, and instead replace them with the voters that no longer want to vote in their winning constituency, right? Yeah. Because they're never going to win either.
Right.
And so they basically swap. It identifies constituencies where basically we move people, we swap them over in order to have, broadly speaking, constituencies that are unanimous. Now, of course, you can't make it perfectly unanimous. Some people don't want to leave. And there will be instances where you can't find another sort of a paired, you can't pair two constituencies because they don't have people that would want to swap.
Yeah, okay.
But in general, you'll be able to find constituencies that do have people that want to swap. With the idea being that as much as you can, the algorithm delivers constituencies that are unanimous. And then, because the constituencies are unanimous, we end up with a more or less proportional representation.
And I can also imagine this somewhat empowering the voters as well to feel like even if they're in a place where maybe their neighbors wouldn't agree with them politically, they still do have a voice as well.
Yeah, their voice. It's just their voice moves to another part of the country.
Fascinating.